morning, sir. We're hungry, and it's black in the morning. You ever get that lazy day that like almost failing like that?
Did you read this?
I said, no, please, I can try it. Everybody tried it.
Telling my husband that caramel corn.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's this sweet, then I'll be in the beer, I guess. I know. Yeah. Especially when you're watching it online.
Yeah, it says he was 23 years old. So the authorities have revised the shooting death downward from 14 to 12. And at least 38 were injured.
Right there.
Obama's going to address the nation. I wonder how far Aurora, Colorado is from Palmer. 20 miles. Oh, my.
Good morning. Hopefully all of you had a good time at the prom last night. This is Angie McCune. She comes to us from Manhattan. She teaches at Wamego, 3rd grade, Kansas. Correct. Just to clarify, not New York. She teaches at Wamego, Kansas, 3rd grade. She's also teaching some graduate courses at Baker University. Welcome, Angie. Thank you.
All right. If you haven't already, grab this QR code or type this in. Takes you to the same place. Basically, yes, as you said, I'm a 3rd grade teacher. I'm going to go my 10th year as a 3rd grade teacher. This presentation, I mean, yes, it's about Flat Stanley. Flat Stanley is the vehicle for this, but really it's more about Google Earth and ways to teach your standards, and it's not so much just about this one project. This project is just what we use to teach this particular area. So, does everybody have this that wants it or needs it? Yeah. If not, I'll back at the end too. But this is where you should go after you do that. Basically, what I'm going to do is kind of overview the project for you. I don't really like to stand up here and talk very much the whole time. So what I want to be able to do is kind of give you the basics, give you the details, hopefully spend less than half the time talking, and then give you some opportunities to talk about it. How could you do this? Because yes, what I'm going to be talking about is going to focus on 3rd grade, because that is what I use this for. But there are some things I have in here that can take this K-8, and not even just social studies. So everybody's going to use it in a slightly different way, and I have some things in here I think that you can use to help you with that. But when you hear me say the vocabulary that I'll be using, yes, it's probably going to be a 3rd grade standard that I'm referencing. There's a lot of ways for you to apply it, if that makes sense. So this is the introduction page. Basically, I've set this up as a web page because I want you to be able to take this and look at it later and use it later. There's a bunch of tutorials embedded in here because I know I'm not going to be able to tell you everything you need to know in an hour. I do want you to be able to actually do some of this and look at some of these YouTube links and things that I have on here. But I also, assuming the internet stays with us. One thing I will suggest, if you have a computer or even an iPad that doesn't have Google Earth already on it, you might want to go ahead and get that downloading because I want to give you an opportunity to actually use it later. Okay, so let me start with the project. My first year, we decided that we wanted to do a Flat Stanley project. One of the big 3rd grade standards that we teach is communities. And so we start with the Wamego community, and we do lots of different things. We actually have a digital scavenger hunt that we do. Give them a list of clues, and they have to go around town. Luckily, Wamego's fairly small, so we can walk. They go downtown and look for different things, and so that's how we hit the actual local area. But we also want to find out more about other communities, and that's where Flat Stanley comes in. So what we do at the very beginning of the year, let me just start by saying this is my social studies from the beginning of the year till December. This is pretty much it, with the exception of the Wamego part, and this year we're going to try to bring our government up just a little bit because of the election. But other than that, this is pretty much social studies for the first half of the year because we can hit so many different things just with this. We also, right off the bat, tie in some language arts, and we have the students write a letter to family member, friend. We encourage them to make it be somebody a little further away. We actually have had flat Stanleys come from Wamego, and every once in a while you learn something new, but we do try to encourage them to branch out. And what I've done for you is, if this is something you're interested in, actually using the whole flat Stanley concept, my letters and everything are attached here. There's an explanation letter that's from the teacher, where we explain, we give them some questions to the recipient that's going to get it, kind of give them some guidance on what they should do. There's the student letter, and what we do is you can kind of, based on the age of your students, do this one a little bit. Basically, this is the outline for my third graders. We have them write it themselves. I have had some students where I just have them write in their name. If you're going to do this with a lower level, maybe they just fill in their name, or a higher level, maybe you don't give them this. You can adjust it for wherever you're at, but this is kind of, so they've got the teacher letter and this that go in their flat, or in their envelope. And then, we have little die cuts that they color to look like themselves. Now, that's how we've done it before. This year, we're thinking about some ideas. So if you've ever done anything similar like this and have some ideas for me, please let me know. We kind of want to go more electronic this year. So we're thinking about actually taking away the whole paper part of it completely and doing more email, or maybe we do mail it to them, but then they have to email it back, or we're thinking about maybe like a Facebook page, or we've got lots of ideas floating around we haven't really nailed down yet, but actually having the responses come back to us electronically, just because it's easier to share out that way. And even with the students, with the letter, it's a lot harder to share. I mean, I'll put it under a document camera, but still, it's a lot easier when it's there, especially to share it without the parents. The students, we can usually get to, but parents, it would be awesome if it was a Facebook page or something like that. So, even though, yes, this is what we've used, we are constantly changing this project as we go. So anyway, they write the letters. Letters are mailed. Basically, we started out, my first year, we actually had them send it to 3 people. And we've gotten to the point where there is so much of a response that we just have them send it to 1 now. They send it to 1, and we encourage them. Let me just back up for a second. How many of you are familiar with Flat Stanley at all? Better question. How many of you are not familiar with what Flat Stanley even is? Okay, Flat Stanley is a book, and about a boy who is basically smashed by a bulletin board. The bulletin board falls on him and he becomes flat. And so while he's flat, one thing that they do is mail him to California to visit some relatives. And so, yeah, instead of buying him a plane ticket, they shove him in an envelope, give him a sandwich, and send him off in the mail. And so that's where this whole idea kind of started. It's based on this children's book. So that's where the flat people come from, and that's why they're sent off. There's actually a whole series of them, but that's the basic of it. So anyway, they send their letters, and then what we do is, as they start to come back, we collect some data on them. And this is where a lot of the standards are really pulled in. And actually, this is not the most current data table. I need to update this. We took off this temperature part, but basically I've got the city name, state, country, population, which is the big one for 3rd grade. We had average temperatures, but it's too hard because they'll say, well, in winter it's this, and in summer it's this, and it was too hard to really nail that down. So we have actually taken those 2 columns out. We have them determine whether it's urban, suburban, or rural. That's another big 3rd grade standard, is that urban, suburban, and rural. And then flat names, that would be like which student it came from, like Jackson or whoever, just so we can track. Because the other thing we do is we really encourage them to pass it on. So if I send it to my grandma, I want her to send back information from wherever she lives. And then I want her to send it to somebody else. And so sometimes by the end, we're getting flat information back for people they don't even know, because it gets passed on so far. But that also gives us the opportunity to go farther, because somebody knows somebody else that lives in California, who knows somebody that lives in England, or whatever. So it gives them opportunities to travel farther. And that's one of the things I've really built on with the Google Earth piece of this.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Have you had any success getting letters back from people that the kids did not know, or sending it to a historical society or to
You know, we've not actually tried to send them to any groups like that, or to it's always been individuals, but we do tend to get a lot of information back from people we don't necessarily know, but it's not so much like groups like that.
How do you do it if the kids have the letters where you know they're going to go letters?
We've had, we've had them from Wamego, and then usually at least that relative might know, have another relative, or and you know what, sometimes they go to one person and they come back. And then that doesn't go any farther, you know what I mean? Some students will have 10 places that they go, some will have one, some won't come back at all. Every once in a while we have some that just don't come back at all. And you know what, sometimes we have students who we never get an address from the parents to send it to in the first place. So we kind of have this pool of people, so if you do a project like this, kind of think about that, this pool of people that we could send it to. There's like for example, the mom of our art teacher has a set flat Stanley packet that every year somebody gets her name and she sends us her play center stuff, and it's the same, like brochures and the different things. She has it ready to go. She's got the letter ready, it's good to go, and so she sends it off. Or with us, some of the teachers have relatives in different places or different things. I even put it on Flirt one year because I needed several, and had a couple people respond that, like Flirt friends that helped me out with it. So, or Twitter, or throw it out to my learning network, and they've had some response from that. So we find ways to get everybody connected somehow, but sadly we do have a few bigger ones that don't get it back. We still get the learning experience of, because I share all the letters that all of the students get back. So even though they may not personally have one, they are still learning from everything else. And by the way, yes, please throw out questions if you have them. And worst case, I'll say I'll get to that. Okay, so that's the project. Does anybody have questions about the project piece of it before I jump over to the Google Earth part? Actually, before I jump to that, one thing I want to share with you. One thing I did when I first created this presentation is I went through all of the Kansas standards. Now, I'm sorry, it is only the Kansas standards because this is probably one of the first times I've had more of a wider audience. But I went through all of the Kansas Social Studies standards, K-5, and figured out ways that you could possibly use Google Earth with your particular standard. So, let me just open that document real quick. So basically, okay, so in kindergarten, these are a few of the standards you might look at. The first grade, these are a few, and it kind of, as you get older, and there's a little bit more. Now you can see why me as a third grade teacher, there's a lot that I can do with it. But as you go up, I mean, the higher the grade levels, the more opportunities probably. But on the other hand, for me, with those lower grade levels, it's just so much more eye-opening, and they're more in awe of it at the kindergarten, first grade level. I showed my son, who's going into kindergarten this year, our house on Google Earth one day, and he was so confused, like he wanted to go outside and look for the camera to try to figure out, how did that get there? I actually took a picture of the Google Earth car, there's a Google Maps car that was sitting over here, because I wanted to show him, this is how that was taken. So I've done a little bit of the work for you, at least till the standards change. For the K-5 at least. Now I started getting out of my knowledge zone a little bit, but there is a place right here that's in your classroom where I try to give some links to the middle school teachers in the group. Some geography here, and then this Google Earth, and there's some ways Discovery Streaming and Google Earth have some things that they do together. So I try to at least give some things, but I think hopefully you can think of ideas, and that's something I want you to share with each other. Is ways that you see how you could use this. And, maybe you are a language arts teacher, for example, and how you can pull that in a little more heavily than maybe I have it in so far. So I want you to take this and adapt it. Now, if you're a third grade teacher, take it and use it the way it is if you want. But I will say, we change it every single year. We change something because we learn from it and we go on. So, all right, let's talk about the Google Earth part. What I have here, this Google Earth part is really something that I've kind of taken ownership over. I'm still working on the rest of my team. There are 5 third grade teachers in my building, to get them to kind of do some of this here with me. Now that we are going to have wireless this year, I'm thinking there'll be some more opportunities for some of that, because right now, so far, this has been very teacher-centered, and I'm going to just put that out there right now. A lot of what I'm sharing with you right now seems very teacher-centered, but I have so many ideas for how I want to make this more student-centered this next year. For example, them keeping more, the data more on their own. We did print that data table for them, and they would write it down. But ways that they can do more of this kind of stuff rather than watching me do it. Okay, so this page gives you a little bit of an idea of the steps that I go through once I receive a letter to use Google Earth with this. So I'm actually going to just go open Google Earth. Yeah, hopefully none of you are in the hotel room that's near mine, because my daughter's been very loud the last couple of days. That would be her right there. Last night mostly. But okay, so once you open Google Earth, basically, how many? Is there anybody? Raise your hand if you have used Google Earth before. Most of you. Okay. Basically, what I start off by doing is I figure out. Okay, so today my flat person went to Wichita, Kansas. Okay. And I just hit search. This is their favorite part when it flies in. And takes me there. Now, before I do anything else, I tag it. This is one of the ways I share it with parents, is I tag that student. So, and I'm going to kind of show you as I do it up here, but I will also tell you there's a whole page of links to tutorials from YouTube about how to do each one of these little things, how to tag, how to make the tracks that I'm going to talk about. So I probably am going to talk a little faster than some of your comfort levels as far as how to do this, but what I would like to do is just overview it now, toward the end of the presentation, and actually come help you personally if it's something that you have a question about. So, but if you are trying to work along with me and have a question, just shout it out. One other thing I will warn you about, if you've not used Google Earth before, down here in the bottom on these layers, do you see like all these little pictures and all these airplanes and different things? If those are some things, like if you have a slower internet connection, or if you don't want all that on there, you can just shut those checkboxes off. I tend to turn them on for some certain things, but a lot of the time, I leave the borders and labels and things on most of the time. I leave 3D buildings off, but yet if I go to Washington, D.C. or something, I might turn that on, because a lot of the monuments and different things that there, you can actually use 3D buildings. So, anyway, okay, let me show you how to tag. Basically, tagging is like this little push pin thing up here at the top. And once you tag it, I just type in the name, and I always just use their first name, so I'll just use my own for now. And that tags that is their place. Okay, that's where they visited. And then for now, I'm just going to click OK. I will tell you, and I'm not going to go say, I just recently had to reinstall everything on my computer, so I don't have it. But one thing you can do, there's actually this little flat thing you can use. And so you can save this icon. Actually, I'll just do that real quick. I'm just going to do a save image as. Throw it on my desktop real quick and show you how I save this. So I actually use that when I tag. All right. There it is. Okay, so instead of using this one, I'll just retag it. Okay. If you click on the little button right there, it'll let you go choose which, you can pick any of these, but if you go to the very bottom, there's something called Add Custom Icon. And so that's where I actually just go get that little flat Stanley image and use that to tag everybody. It's very simple. It's the only one I have. I need to find or maybe draw a little girl one or something, but basically, so now my flat person actually has a little flat for my picture instead of this little yellow push pen. So, simple things, but the kids love it. Okay, so while you're in here, that's initially when I do that in class, I just tag it. And then what we'll do is, a lot of times we use Google Earth to figure out some of that information on the data table. Sometimes the people will have written it in their letter. Very rarely, though, do they say whether they're an urban community or a suburban community or things like that. A lot of times we use context or look at the pictures and try to figure that out. So in Wichita, I would probably, I start zooming in and say, okay, well, what kinds of things should we look for to determine if it's urban, suburban, and rural, okay, or rural. We had one from Dodge City. So I could say, okay, what do you see all the way around? Or kind of try to have them look around and see what different things they see to determine what it is. The other thing that they use to help them with that a lot is most letters do a good job of telling us what the population is, and so we use that as an indicator too. But urban, suburban, and rural seems to be one of the harder things for my third graders to get a concept of, and I think it's a very rural community. So, and a lot of them haven't ever really been to an urban community. So for them to get that concept of what that actually looks like is difficult for some of them, and that's why this can be so helpful. Okay, so, make sure I'm not jumping ahead real quick. Let me. All right, so anyway, the link to that flat person is right here on this component page. There also, as you start tagging more and more students, you'll want to pay attention to your organization over on the side, right over here. So, like right now, each time you tag something, it'll list it separately. So if you just keep tagging, you will have a ton of little pins over here. So I tend to make folders, and so there's a link on the website that shows you some ideas for how to organize that so that your stuff is not a mess over there on the side. There are some things you can do in Google Earth as far as like you can make tours. That's something I really want to try with my kids this year. Is actually having them do some narration and saying, talking about where their flat Stanley went and talking a little bit about that community. That's one of those pieces I'm hoping to pull now that we're going to have some more technology in our hands. Actually, Kim from Inman has done a little bit with that with some of her projects. So if that little piece is something you're interested in, she's actually the person I would seek out, not me. Maybe talk to me after this year when I've actually hopefully had a chance to try it. But that is something, I did put a tutorial on here for that if that's something you're interested in also. Let me talk a little bit about some of the features of Google Earth that I used a lot. Most of these are listed here under this benefits page. I kind of touched on this, but the visual for the kids is huge. And for any level, I think. Of course, the first thing they want to do is go find the house. But after that, I mean, just giving them the visual of these different places is huge. One conversation I had with my students is, I don't remember exactly what it was at Dodson, but somewhere on the Western campus, they saw circles. What are those circles out there in the land? Why are those there? So this huge conversation about irrigation and just the way that the whole conversation, I mean, there's so many, this is a starting point for so many conversations I've had with my students that I wouldn't have had if we weren't looking at this. Marshes in Florida, most of them have never seen, that particular year that we actually looked at some marshes in Florida, none of them had ever been to a marsh. They didn't really even understand what a marsh was. So looking at some of those kinds of things. I already mentioned helping determine urban, suburban, and rural, 3D landmarks, measuring distance if you're a math teacher, doing some different things with the ruler tool is very cool. Historical imagery is probably my favorite part. Let me show you an example. One thing that really is great for my students, I said I talked about that Wamigo piece of it. If I go to my school, West 6th Street, this is a great one because my school was renovated since I started teaching there. And so to give them a little bit of understanding of how things can change in an area, this is something they all know. They know the school. This is something, if they've not even gone, I had a student a couple years ago that's never been to Topeka. That's about 40 minutes east of Wamigo. Not very far. They've never been there. So they just, some of them, this is their world. So the school, they know. They can get that. So what I do is say, well, the school didn't always look like this. This is how it looks now. But if you look right here, and I'll warn you, those of you on iPads, you can't do this part, but maybe someday. I'm hoping that we can get there. This is one of those places where this is to have the computer, but basically there's a little button up here at the top. Looks like a clock with an arrow on it. And then you'll have this little slider here. And what this slider does is it lets you look where the different satellite images they have are. And so this is, fairly recent. But if I go to, let's say, it's where all these little marks are. So if I go to 2008, actually it probably looks about the same. Yeah, looks about the same. Although, actually, there's some houses. There's a housing development that hasn't always been here, right here. One thing I really point out to them because they're so familiar with it is this housing development, this neighborhood, and the school. To just keep watching those. And so I go back to 2008, I go back to 2006, and really, you can see right now that that little housing development right there, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, is looking a lot different. Then I can go back to 2005, which is when the school was under construction. Show them how there wasn't any grass. There's no houses down here right now in that picture. And then as I keep going further back, so there's 2004. That housing development's not even there. They also start saying, why are they so blurry now? Because as further back you go, the satellite images aren't as clear. And then I think it's the next one. Oh no, that one's still in color. But a whole chunk of the school's gone. The school goes way down here now, and so they just, and then we walk around the building and I show them the brick that used to be the outside is still in the building. So we go around and look and just, they can see us, this used to be an outside wall. And just trying to get them to get that concept. A lot of these houses over here, and so we get into these conversations about how land changes and habitats. I had a great conversation with my students this last year about habitat and how when they built that housing development that's right over there by the school now, what used to live there. This is from 1991. So there's a street there, all those housing. So we've talked about, okay, so what do you think lived here? And bring in a lot of science in this part. What was here then that now in 2000, I think the latest picture is actually 2010. Look how different that looks. Okay, and so just pulls in so many other pieces and science standards and social standards that I can have this conversation. I ended up having to move my social studies time because we were always in the middle of these really great conversations and then we had to go to PE. So I moved it to a different time of day so we could try to get a little deeper in that because they learned so much just from that. And they get this because it's so close to home. So time lapse is probably one of my favorite features, and it's probably one that, as I presented this before, or I shared it in my, I have one of my bigger classes, I have a week where we focus on Google Earth. This is probably the one that teachers really like the most. Well, even just people in general really like this one the most. And because you can go do it anywhere. Another place where this is huge, and I really do a lot of science with this, Greensburg, Kansas. Pretty much, from what I've found, anytime there's a natural disaster or something like that, they go make sure they have images. So, Greensburg, if I go to now, or actually what I usually do is, let's see, I'm trying to remember what year that was. The 2007, 6. I start back, oh, there we go. Okay, so here is August of 2006, okay? And I'll get nice and zoomed in. And then I can go to May of 2007 and just show them what a huge difference, and really get, up close as much as I can and really show them and really kind of give them a visual of what kind of destruction and things like that they can see. If you go and look at Joplin, you can actually, if you get zoomed into the right distance, you can see totally where the line was that the tornado went through. So tornadoes, there's lots of different websites out there that'll take like tsunamis and like things from Haiti and things like that, and they'll have a slider that it'll show you, okay, here's before, here's the after the same image, and you can slide it back and forth and just see the differences. So it's just really, because most students, luckily, have not experienced anything like this, so to really get them to understand what this can do, this is great for that. Okay, so that is, and then another thing I bring in with the Greensburg conversation is, okay, so here's now, or here's 2010 at least. I bring it up to the most recent one, and we'll have the whole conversation about all the things they've done to be more green. And so, again, very outreaching, very global kind of perspective just from looking at this one thing. There are these tools, I encourage you to explore with these a little bit later, but there is the ruler. This is the button you can use if you're going to actually record the tour. The other thing that I do a lot of is I add paths. This is something I started doing when we were having students, like when they would send it on. I wanted to track where it was going. And so I started adding paths with my students. And what that looks like is, let me go to have that linked. There it is. I save a KMZ file, and I can show you how to do this, I can come help you with this, or I have a tutorial on how to do this. But each time I add students, I save that file. And what I have attached here is the file that I had from last year. You'll notice that this is from February. This project, we asked them to have them back by about December, but they always tend to kind of trickle in. And so we were still sharing them into the spring sometimes. I actually got a letter last year that was from a student from the year before. I don't know if it got lost in the mail, if the grandma found it and then sent it, or what exactly happened, but I actually I read it to my class, and then I went and took it to that student who was in 4th grade at the time, because it came so much later. The other thing I'll throw in here real quick, because I almost forgot about this, some of the stuff that people send back is so amazing. One year, it was during Mardi Gras, they sent us an actual king cake and beads and the whole bit, and so just some of the things that the students just get so excited about, especially if it's a box. If you get a box instead of an envelope, they're pumped. I mean, I had, there was another, it wasn't my class, one class, every kid got a t-shirt from the Danish Town. I mean, I've gotten some pencils and things like that, but that was huge. I guess there was one year I had them go to Australia, they all got these little koalas that hands will grab onto things. So, I mean, if there's some stuff in it, that makes it even cooler for them. But even just the postcards and pictures that they get are really amazing. But what happens is, I can open this file. I'm going to just say open with Google Earth. Because I want to show you what this looks like after you've actually done it. Okay. All right, so see, that's when everybody is, I've got everybody turned on, basically. You can see the lines are going everywhere. And so this is a file that I save, or this is a file that I share with my students. I have a blog that I use to keep parents up to date on everything. And so periodically I will go post this KMZ file. They do have to have Google Earth to see it on their computer, but I post this KMZ file and they can go and look. And most of it pay attention to their own kids. But what I can do is, this is, to me, is a little overwhelming to look and say, wow, they're everywhere. And as you can see, what I've done is I have everybody start at the school. So there's the school right there. Okay, and then they go out in all different directions. And I'll show you how to make a path here in just a minute. But what you can do is, there's these check boxes over here. If you want to just look at one student, you can uncheck this main box, and then let's just say I just want to see where Jessica went. Okay, and so if I zoom out, I can see that Jessica went from Kansas to somewhere over in, looks like Tennessee, up to, I think it was Maryland or Virginia, I could zoom in and check, and then clear over to California. So just her path, that shows her. And so the students, when they take this, or when their parents look at this at home, it's just such a great conversation. I've had lots of conversations with parents about their kids will come home and say, my flat Stanley went to California today, and they'll go and pull this up, and then they'll start talking about, well, and it was from San Diego, and it was really urban, there were these huge buildings, and they'll just go on and on and on, and it's, the connections that they're making and the things that they're learning about that they wouldn't have seen otherwise, I really attribute a lot to this, to the Google Earth piece of this. So she went to 3 different places. There are students, I believe that Michael was one of them, who he went to, I think it was Topeka. So, and that was it. But I've got his path, and it's lined up, and he actually got some really interesting information about Topeka. But again, that would be an example of one that didn't go past that. So I've got, basically, and this is one thing I was talking about, go check out that organization when I make a folder, because one thing I end up having to do is, once you open the folder, these little drop-down boxes there, it has their tag, but it also has their path. Those are saved kind of separately. So these are all the different tags for her, and that's her path. So that's why I put it in the folder, because otherwise it's a huge mess of information there, and that just kind of helps keep it organized. So I think right now, let me just really briefly, let me first of all show you that back over here, because like I said, in an hour I'm not going to be able to really show you how to do these in a way that you're going to remember it effectively be able to do it. And having this on a projector also messes up the way that it should look. But I have tutorials on place marks and tours, so that's making the marks, and then actually how to record a tour. I have got one on how to do historical imagery. So if you don't have a computer with you today, and you just have to basically watch me do it, and you get home and need to remember how to do it, there you go. How to use the ruler tool, how to use Street View. Kids love Street View. Creating paths, which I'll show you here in a second. How to save the KMZ files. That's slightly more complicated than you would think, just to make sure you get the right file saved. So there's that. And it's not overly complicated. Don't let me scare you away from it. But it's not as much as like when you save a Word document. You have to kind of pay a little bit of attention to what you have selected. How to create folders, and then how to use the polygon tool, which I haven't used the polygon tool, but as I've had conversations with teachers that have used this, a lot of times if they're talking about area or things like that, square footage, when they're trying to teach what an acre is, things like that, they use the polygon tool to actually get, rather than I just have lines, they want a bigger space, so they use the polygon tool for that. So there are YouTube links to all of those different things there. But I thought about just showing you the one for creating a path, but I'm afraid that the internet's not going to like that. And so let me just show you real quick. So if I wanted to make a path, I'm going to start here at West, at my school. And I need to turn off historical imagery. There we go. That's one thing I forget to do sometimes. You do need to push that button to turn it back off, because I'll have it set on like 2006, and then I'll go to another place and we're not looking at it in current time. So you do have to kind of toggle that off and on to make sure that you're looking at the current image. But, okay, so if I want to go from here, one thing that I do is I get zoomed in as much as I possibly can, because I want my lines to actually look like they're coming from the people. One thing I don't do is I don't tag the actual address that it came from, because I don't want to really pinpoint someone's grandma's house or whatever. I just tag it from the town. But when I make my path, I just zoom into wherever the actual flat person was when it was tagged. With the exception of the school, that's the only one where I actually put in the address. Most of the time I just put in the name of the town. So if I want to make a path, what I do is it's this little tool right there that says add path. It's got the little dots. And it opens it up. And I name my paths after the student. So like I had all those tags for Flat Jessica. Her path is called Flat Jessica's Travels. And so I'll just make one up real quick called Flat Angie's Travels. Okay. Now, here's the key. Don't close that box. It took me a while to figure that out the first time. I would close it and then not be able to figure out why I wasn't able to make my path. What you want to see is the little this little symbol right here, this little target looking thing. That is ready for you to now mark your spot. So I'm going to start, I always start it here at the school, and then still don't close the box. You want to go find your other spot. So this is where another thing, this is one thing you have to do on a computer. The arrow keys come in real handy. You can zoom out without losing your path. So I tend to zoom out, and I'm going to go find where I tagged myself. And actually, I think I turned it off. But I could go find where I had tagged myself in Wichita. But let's just say, I'm going to go back to my college alma mater, Emporia. And I'm going to go tag and say that I went there. And I should have turned my the rest of my little images back on, but I'm going to just go tag the town. I don't have you. I tend to put it where I had my flat person, but you don't have to. So I'm going to get as zoomed in as I can, and I'm going to go tag that. So what you do is once you click again, you've now made the line. So if I zoom back out, you can see that now I have a line that goes from Wamego to Emporia. And you can see my path.
Can you change the color of the line? Probably so.
I think that you can. I've never actually tried, but there are a bunch of options here for style and color.
There you go. So everybody
So
has their own color. Cool.
I might have to add that. I never actually really went into this to the style and color part very much, but that's a great idea. I'm gonna have to make sure, or even you could even do like if it's their first part, one color.
Yeah.
That's why I like doing this kind of stuff, is because I learn from it too. There is a whole bunch of different things. If you're talking about latitude and longitude, you can actually directly go that way. So right now, as long as this box is open, I can keep tagging. So even if I want to go, oh good, Slide Angie is still there. So if I want to go now from Emporia to Wichita, now I've got that second part of the line. And so this is where you need to know that for, okay, so Fly Jessica came in today, but 2 weeks from now when another Fly Jessica comes, I'm going to have to go edit that same one. I don't want to make a new path, I want to edit the same path so that all her stuff stays together. So that's one of those situations where now that I've got that, if I go click on it right here and do a little right click, and remember there's a tutorial for this, and properties, now I can just go add to it again. And I can start wherever it left off. So that's how you do the paths. Any more questions? I'm going to show you a couple of things. I want to talk a little bit about the iPad in this. I know I really hit the highlights, but like I said, I would need a whole morning, maybe a whole day to really teach you really well how to do these things. And so that's why hopefully I've got some good tutorials up. Most of these tutorials actually come from Google Earth, like they made them themselves. So hopefully they're good. Or like I said, my contact information is on here. If you have trouble, just send me an email. Say, this is not working. Give me some ideas of what you're doing. I'm always happy to follow up and help out later on. Okay, so more information here for you. Let me just make sure, because this is for you to have, pass on, say, you know a teacher that could do awesome stuff with this. Give her the information. Have them email him, give him my email, however it works. I'm always happy to spread this around. So I've told you the Google Earth components. I've talked about the benefits. I have some other links on here. Just some other Google Earth information. The homepage where you can download it if you need it. They've got some gallery of different things that you can do with it. Google Lit Trips is something, if you're reading, there's certain novels and different books that as the characters go through different things, you can follow it on Google Earth. And then there's this link to 26 interesting ways to use Google Earth in the classroom. I actually had a 7th grade teacher recently who wanted to do some things with this, focusing on like Kansas history, Oregon Trail, things like that. And so one thing I suggested to him, are very many of you familiar with how to do an advanced Google search? Anybody? Ooh, all right. Let me just show you. If you have something really specific like that you want to use Google, now this has nothing to do with Flat Stanley, but that's okay. If you have something specific you really think that Google Earth can help you with, one thing I suggest is going and finding a, where's the year? Whenever they updated it, they made the advanced search really here. I'm just going to say advanced Google search. There we go. Okay, so when you go to an advanced Google search, one of the things you can do, if you scroll down, you will see one called file type. And this is great for actually a lot of reasons. I know a lot of teachers that will look for PowerPoints about whatever information they're about to present and then kind of adapt them and not have to start it from scratch. But what I like to do with it, they have these KML and KMZ files. If I want to do, I'm going to look up a KMZ file for, let's say, Oregon Trail.
Oh, somebody already made one.
Somebody's probably already made that. And so everything that it pulls up, these are all Google Earth files that are about the Oregon Trail. And so I'm just going to click on the first one. And so what they've done here, one other thing I need to do though, I'm going to go make sure that all of my Flat Stanley stuff is shut off. Because otherwise it doesn't have anything to do with anything. Okay, so they've got, this all mapped out. Some of these, I would suggest exploring if you decide to do this. Most of the time what you've got, is they'll put each one of those place marks, they type in the information. There we go. So there's pictures. I've seen some that have videos in them. In that actual place mark, I wasn't doing anything but putting the name. So you can put all kinds of stuff in there and use this for whatever different thing that you're wanting to teach. So anything you think you might be able to use Google Earth for, try that advanced Google search and see if you, just type in whatever you want it to be up where it says 5 pages width, and just make sure down here under file type that you've got a Google Earth file. And see, I said KMZ and it gave me KML, so I can hold it both. I would strongly suggest checking it out. There are some out there that are not good, but there are some out there that are excellent about different things like that. Yeah?
What's the difference between the two file types?
I have to look, but one has more media than the other. I can never remember which one is which, but there's one that has some, it'll have more media-rich things embedded in it, like possibly videos and things like that. I think it's KML that's that way, but I can double check that. But basically, it's the they're not that different, but it's the types of information that is embedded within the file, and one of them has more media than the other. So anyway, there's my extra little toss in of Google stuff. This is great for this, but it's great for a lot of other things too. So if you have more questions about that, that's a whole other topic that you can catch me about later. Okay, so there, all the tutorials, the standards, I've got all them, the K-5 one specifically there for you. In your classroom, I did one thing, this page kind of goes with the standards pages. I just threw out a possibility for each grade level of something that maybe you could do. Second grade, maybe you could use the timeline of that time lapse to look at the town, your town with those of the past. Actually do that a lot in third grade too. Talking about colonies in fifth grade. I mean, there's lots of different, now obviously you're not going to have satellite images from when there were 13 colonies, but you could still talk about the area. Let's talk about iPads a little bit. There are some ways to use the iPad with Flat Stanley. There's a couple of different things. One thing there's actually a Flat Stanley app that puts the flat, like, you know, I told you we actually have Flat Stanleys we've decorated and we take, and people put them in their pictures. But there's actually an app on here that puts the Flat Stanley in the picture for you. Actually, let me get this. I can show it to you real quick. And then I'll also show you Google Earth on the iPad is not as feature rich as it is on the computer. And I don't know if that's something that will eventually get better or if it's just one of those limitations that's going to be there. But basically, let me make sure this is. I tested this out. Oh, there we go. Okay. Guys, I closed it. Okay. So basically, and you can use Flat Stella to use this, so there is a girl one. But basically, you pick which one you want, and you can dress them up, and then, so I want mine to look like Super Stella. And, oh no, I have to buy that like a time. So, okay, I'm just going to stick with whatever it'll let me do for free. Okay. I'm not going to worry about all the bio and all that right now, but you can do that. And then, didn't even updated this, but basically, without going through the whole process, what it'll do is you take a picture with your iPad and the flat person's in it already, rather than having to hold up the little paper version. It's just one way. So if you ever receive a flat person, this could be something to do. Or I'm really thinking that this might be something that, as we encourage our parents to do, or in our people that participate in this with us, to do it more electronically, that they could do something similar to this. I need to investigate this app a little more and see what it would really take for me to actually have, rather than my students draw one, actually have them create one on here and have how that all really works. But this is something I'm just starting to explore, is how this Flat Stanley iPad app works. I think it's iPhone app too. But Google Earth, this still works well in some ways for different things. You can, there are some of the layers that you can turn off and on, not as many, but they're there. There are, let me try that over. I had it open earlier. I'm going to close it and reopen it. Okay. This is great for just letting students really kind of explore on their own. And I haven't used this when I've shared it with my class. I tend to do it with my computer. But when they have an opportunity, and like I said, I haven't had wireless before, but starting this year, I'll be able to let them actually go in and look at these, like they have some center time and things like that during guided reading, that they can go in and really look at their particular area. So they can just, this will be for me more of a chance for them to really get it in their hands. The other thing that I don't like, but it's better than I thought it was going to be, I was trying to figure out how to get my paths on here so they could really go in and see what they've done. And the only thing that I did find that there's this KNZ Loader app, and I linked it. There's a link on that website for you to get to this. But basically what it does is you have to load your KNZ file from here. So like I've got that, I say open KNZ and then Google Earth, and it'll open it, but the problem is I can't do individual students from here. It has to have them all. And so at the end, when there are a ton of them, they're everywhere. And so the other part is it doesn't have the people, or it doesn't have a lot of those things in there. So it's better than nothing, but it is obviously not as much to it as it is on the computer. But it has improved even since I looked at it originally, so maybe someday that'll still be something that we can still do. I just realized there's 10 minutes left. I got to stop talking. Basically, that was it though. As I've got links to those apps. Oh, hold on. I've got links to those apps there for you, and I've got all three of those on there: the Google Earth, KMZ Loader, and the flat Stanley one. And then my contact information is here. This is my personal email address. So if you pick up a card that's got my school email address, you can use either one. This link right here just takes you to my blog. You're welcome to go visit it, but basically it's my, it's how I share it with students and their parents. If I click on it, what I can do, I'll type it in the class. Show you how I share it with them. One thing I found, WordPress doesn't let me attach KMZ files directly. So what I've done is I've got a Google site that I just go throw the file on, and then I just link to it. So that's how the parents can get to it to download that file, so that they can see the most current one, and periodically I just put it up there for them to go look at. I think, first of all, does anybody have questions that might be a question that everybody would learn something from? Okay, well, I'd like you to take the last 10 minutes to talk with your table. First of all, how could you use this? Experiment a little bit. If you have a question or you want me to actually need my help to show you how to do something, I can come and do that. But basically, I just want to take the last 10 minutes or so to let you, I really want to do more than 10 minutes, sorry. I want you to have an opportunity to really kind of dig into it a little bit. And I want to hear your ideas. If there's something that I haven't mentioned that you think you might do with it, I want to hear about it, because I share this presentation a lot, and I want to be able to give those ideas to other people. That time I got to sit with that 7th grade teacher, there were so many things that came into my head about things that I could tell other people to do or share with them that I wouldn't have thought about because I teach middle school. So please shout out, talk with your tables, let me know how I can help or what I can do, or if you need any more information. So go ahead. Yeah.
When you teach.
Yeah. It'd be more files. Right, yes, you could. She just had a great idea. If you really want them to be separate, you could save each kid as a separate KMZ file, and then it would work a little better with the app. It's more files, but it would work better with the app if you were wanting to do more with the iPad.
I think if you use the colors, it will.
The colors will help too. The colors will help too if I can come up with it.
Try.
Didn't they want to play nice? That's good.
I don't know Stanley, but our second grade, so I think this would be good to really go back and share stuff with us. And then I just use Google Earth because I did some social studies. So I think it would be nice.
I haven't.
So, most part of it has the same. Like, we don't have one
Here's the QR code again in case you still need that site.
Now, when somebody gives you a site like that instead of
But you can on the computer and you can get so much more detail on Google Earth and on the street. So what's really
I really wish you couldn't hear it. I don't.
Okay, so is it an application? Well, it didn't show it. And, well, yeah, because Google. Okay, that's great.
Actually, I think that was activity, but that's different.
no, this is Kevin.
Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention that actually had happened with 3 different kids this year. Their grandparents took it, they RV'd, and so they took it the whole time. But they went to a bunch of different places, or like their dad went on a business trip or whatever. So it doesn't necessarily have to travel from person to person, it just needs to travel. So that's another.
Yeah, it's like a first grade trip. Actually, it's actually like first grade video series.
Maybe.
But otherwise, it's like
Well, I just feel like this is my school. That's not community.
and then of course you can't just have
So what's going on in Denver?
one way of
We didn't actually send them class, like, I scheduled their class. And so we didn't send them a letter, we shared. So one of my guys is on my sheet is like, I put the last class down, it was the class meeting. And so there's a class to bring in some more Skype type.
Yeah. I just saw two yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. That would be.
This is a workhorse. Oh my God.
we do all kinds of things.
When I'm stressed, it's in the right of my okay? And I don't want to say anything.
Right.
You need to go now 3 a.m. You start at 7.
I would end up one with my The other thing that maybe just with you, we Skyped with the class, and so we Skyped all together, and then she thinks she's gonna.
Ooh, okay. Cool. I love that idea. And here's a KMO file. Maps of ground motion and shaking.
Angie, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Angie so much, and if you do have ideas, please share with her. Maybe email me or whatever.
My cards are right here, and I can lay them. I'll go lay them by the water.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
So it's this creative.
nutrition. I know.
Oh, yeah, internet's slow again. I've got this much of a picture.